Being warm is costing you respect. Not slowly, instantly. Look around. The more available you are, the less seriously people take you. The kinder you act without limits, the easier you are to ignore. Strange, isn't it? In a world that praises kindness, the people who get respected aren't the warmest, they're the most controlled. So let me ask you something. When was the last time someone truly hesitated before disrespecting you? Exactly. You reply too fast. You forgive too easily. You show up every time. And without realizing it, you've trained people to see you as optional, replaceable, safe to overlook. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Warmth without boundaries doesn't make you admirable, it makes you predictable. And predictable people are easy to control. But what if you flip that? What if, instead of being the one waiting, you became the one people wait for? What if your silence made people nervous? What if your absence made them rethink how they treated you? In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you something most people never understand. How controlled coldness changes the way the world responds to you. Not fake arrogance, not cruelty, precision. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to detach emotionally, shift the power dynamic in every interaction, and make people think twice before ever underestimating you again. Ignore this, and nothing changes. Same treatment, same disrespect, same frustration. But apply it and something subtle happens. People pause before speaking to you. They measure their words. They respect your presence without you asking for it. Because the moment you stop being easy to read, you stop being easy to dismiss. Let's begin. Number 1, become unpredictable. Let me say this in a way most people won't. Your problem isn't that people disrespect you. It's that they've already figured you out completely. You've become a pattern, and patterns don't get respected, they get used. You've lived this. Someone texts, you reply instantly. Someone cancels, you say, no worries, even when it bothered you. Someone disrespects you subtly, you brush it off just to keep things smooth. You think you're being mature, but what you're really doing is training people on how little they have to invest to keep you around. And once they learn that, it's over. There's a version of you people have memorized. The reliable one, the understanding one, the one who never pushes back, never disappears, never creates tension. Sounds good on paper, but in reality, that version of you is easy to control. And nobody respects what they can control. Think about the last time you felt obsessed with someone. Be honest. It wasn't the person who was always there, always replying, always predictable. It was the one you couldn't quite read. The one who sometimes pulled away. The one who made you question where you stood. That uncertainty, it gets under your skin. I knew a guy, solid guy, disciplined, respectful, always did the right thing. But with women, with friends, even at work, he was invisible. Not because he lacked value, but because he made himself too available, too consistent, too easy. One day he stopped, not dramatically, no announcement, he just changed his rhythm. Slower replies, selective presence, sometimes warm, sometimes distant, no explanations. Within weeks, people started leaning in. Messages doubled, invitations increased. The same people who ignored him were now trying to read him. Nothing about his value changed, just his predictability. That's the shift most men never make. Unpredictability creates tension, and tension creates attention. Attention, when controlled, becomes respect. This isn't about playing games like a teenager. It's about breaking the illusion that you're always accessible, always the same, always there. Because the moment people feel they have guaranteed access to you, your value drops without them even realizing it. So you change the pattern. You don't answer everything immediately, not because you're busy, but because your time isn't on demand. You don't show up to everything, not because you're unavailable, but because your presence isn't cheap. You don't react the same way twice, because you're not a script they can memorize. One day you're engaged, sharp, present. Next time, you're quiet, observant, almost distant. Not fake, controlled, intentional. There's a difference. And watch what happens. They start thinking about you when you're not there. They replay conversations. They question themselves. Did I say something wrong? Why is he different? That subtle confusion, that's where your power begins. Because when people can't predict you, they can't position themselves above you. And the moment they can't position themselves, they start respecting you. You don't need to chase attention when your absence creates it. Number 2, speak less, command more. Most men talk like they're on trial, constantly explaining, defending, justifying, trying to be understood, and they don't even realize what that signals. It signals doubt, it signals need, it tells everyone in the room, I need you to agree with me. And the moment you need that, you lose authority. Watch closely next time you're in a group. There's always one guy filling every silence, over-explaining simple points, adding extra words no one asked for. He thinks he's being clear, but what people hear is noise, predictable, harmless noise. They nod, they look away, they check their phone. He's talking more and being heard less. Now look at the other one, the quiet one. Not shy, controlled. He doesn't rush to speak. He lets others reveal themselves first. He watches, calculates, waits, and when he finally says something, short, precise, almost surgical, the room shifts. People stop. They listen. Not because he's louder, but because he's rare. That's the part nobody teaches you. Every word you say either builds your presence or leaks it. And most men are leaking constantly, trying to prove something that should never need proving. I remember a meeting where 2 men handled the same situation completely differently. One got challenged and immediately started explaining himself, talking faster, stacking arguments, trying to cover every angle. You could feel it, the slight tension in his voice, the need to convince. The more he spoke, the weaker he looked. The other man was challenged too. He paused, looked straight at the person, said calmly, "That's the decision." Then silence, no follow-up, no defense, just stillness. And something strange happened. Nobody pushed him. Same room, same pressure, different energy. One asked to be understood. The other assumed authority. That's the difference. Silence, when you're comfortable with it, becomes pressure. It forces people to lean in, to fill the gap, to second-guess themselves. Most men can't handle that space, so they rush to fill it, and in doing so, they give away their position. You need to unlearn that. Stop over-explaining. If someone questions your decision, you don't owe them a speech. "That's how I'm doing it" is enough. And then you stop. Let the silence sit. Let them deal with it. Stop repeating yourself. Say it once, clearly. If they missed it, that's their problem, not yours. Repetition is what you use when you're trying to convince, not when you're certain. Stop trying to make everyone comfortable. Silence makes people uneasy. Good. That unease is where respect starts forming. Because now they're not just hearing you, they're feeling you. And here's the part that hits most men. You talk too much when you're unsure of your own value. You fill space because you're afraid of being overlooked. You explain because you're afraid of being misunderstood. You keep speaking because you're afraid of losing control of the moment. But control isn't in saying more, it's in needing to say less. Cold men don't speak to impress. They don't speak to be liked. They speak when there's something worth placing on the table, and once it's there, they don't touch it again. No backtracking, no softening, no maybe I'm wrong. Just presence and finality. And when you master that, something shifts quietly. People start listening before you even open your mouth, not because of what you might say, but because of what you choose not to say. Number 3, detach from approval. This is where most men break, because this isn't surface level, this is addiction. Quiet, socially accepted addiction. You don't call it that, but look at your behavior. Checking your phone for replies that should mean nothing, replaying conversations in your head, adjusting what you say so you don't come off wrong. That's not awareness, that's dependence. And you think you're hiding it, but you're not. It leaks in your tone, in your timing, in the way you soften your words just to be accepted. People pick up on it instantly, not consciously, but they feel it. And once they feel that you need something from them, approval, validation, reassurance. The power dynamic is already decided. You're below them. I've seen this play out in ways most men refuse to admit. A guy sends a message, then checks his phone every 5 minutes like his self-worth is tied to those typing dots. He sees the message delivered, no reply. His mind starts spiraling. Did I say something wrong? Is she losing interest? Should I text again? And without realizing it, he just handed control of his emotional state to someone else. That's the trap. Needing approval doesn't just make you look weak, it makes you predictable. Easy to steer, easy to keep at a distance. Because people know exactly what to give you, just enough attention to keep you hooked, never enough to make you stable. That's how you get managed. Now flip it. Think about the one person you know who genuinely doesn't care how they're perceived. Not fake confidence, not arrogance, real detachment. They say what they mean, they don't over-explain, they don't chase reactions. And watch how people behave around them, more careful, more measured, almost cautious. Why? Because there's nothing to grab onto. No emotional handle, no pressure point. They're not trying to be liked, so they can't be controlled through liking. I worked with 2 men who made this contrast painfully clear. One of them was always trying to impress, staying late, laughing too hard at jokes, saying yes to everything, constantly checking if he was doing things right. People tolerated him, but no one respected him. You could feel it. The other one did his job, clean, efficient, no noise. Didn't stay late to be seen, didn't perform for approval, didn't seek validation. He just operated, quietly. And when decisions were made, he was the one they trusted. Not because he tried, but because he didn't need to. That's the shift most men never make. The moment you stop chasing approval, people start adjusting to you. They test you less. They respect your boundaries more. Not because they suddenly became better, but because you removed the leverage they had over you. So you start cutting the habits. You stop asking for opinions you don't actually need. Every "what do you think?" chips away at your authority. You already know what you want, you're just looking for permission. You stop apologizing for existing. "Sorry I can't make it" turns into "I won't be there." Clean, final, no emotional residue. You stop reacting to validation like it's oxygen. Someone compliments you, you nod, appreciate it, and move on. No overreaction, no need to stretch the moment. And rejection? You don't chase clarity from it. You observe it, you adjust if needed, or you discard it, but you don't let it define you. Because here's the truth most men avoid. Your value doesn't rise or fall based on how people respond to you. It only feels that way when you've outsourced your identity. Take it back, and something changes. You become harder to read, harder to influence, harder to shake. Not because you're pretending, but because you're no longer dependent. And that's when it happens. Quietly. You stop seeking approval, and people start seeking yours. Not because you ask for it, but because you no longer need it. Number 4, use absence as power. Most men get this completely backwards. They think being available makes them important. It doesn't. It makes them convenient. And convenient men get used, not respected. If you're always there, always replying, always showing up, you're not reliable, you're predictable. And predictable becomes invisible over time. People stop valuing what they can access whenever they want. No tension, no risk, no consequence, no respect. You've felt this before, even if you didn't want to admit it. You're the one initiating conversations, making plans, checking in, and somehow you're also the one being canceled on, delayed, ignored. It doesn't make sense on the surface. You're giving more, so why are you getting less? Because you remove the only thing that creates value. There's a moment, subtle but brutal, where people realize they don't have to earn your presence. And from that moment on, they stop trying. I remember watching this play out with a guy who had everything going for him, disciplined, focused, solid life. But socially, he was always the one chasing, always the first to text, the one adjusting his schedule, the one making himself available. At first, people appreciated it. Then they got used to it. Then they expected it. And then, they stopped respecting it. He'd get last-minute cancellations with no apology, messages left unread, plans that only happened if he pushed for them. And you could see it slowly getting to him, that quiet frustration, that internal question, why am I not being valued? Nothing was wrong with him, except one thing. He was too accessible. So he changed one variable. Not his personality, not his value, just his availability. He stopped initiating everything, took longer to respond, said no without negotiating, started prioritizing his own time without explaining himself. And something almost uncomfortable happened. People came back. Same people, different behavior. Suddenly they were the ones reaching out, trying to lock in plans, respecting his time. Not because they became better, but because access to him was no longer guaranteed. That's the part most men resist. You don't get valued for being present. You get valued for being missed. Absence creates contrast. It reminds people what life feels like without you. And humans only truly appreciate something when they feel the possibility of losing it. So you need to become scarce. Not in a dramatic, attention-seeking way, quiet, controlled, intentional. You stop being the first to reach out every time. You let silence exist. You let them wonder if you're still there, not out of insecurity, but out of discipline. You stop showing up everywhere. Your presence isn't default, it's selective. When you walk into a room, it should feel like you chose to be there, not like you had nowhere else to go. You stop being everyone's safety net. You help when you decide to, not when it's expected. Because the moment helping becomes your role, it stops being appreciated and starts being demanded. And here's the internal conflict. Part of you will feel like you're being cold, distant, maybe even unfair. That's conditioning. You were trained to believe that constant availability equals being a good man. It doesn't. A man who is always available has no leverage, no edge, no mystery. And without those, there is no respect. Your time is the only resource you can never recover. And yet most men give it away like it's worthless just to feel included, just to feel wanted. That's the trade you need to break. Pull back, not to punish others, but to reclaim yourself. Disappear occasionally. Let conversations breathe. Let people come to you without being prompted. Because absence doesn't make people love you more. It makes them realize how easily they could lose you. And once that thought enters their mind, they start moving differently around you. Number 5, guard your emotions. Let's strip this down to something raw. Most men don't have a control problem. They have an exposure problem. They show too much, too fast, to the wrong people, and then wonder why it gets used against them later. You've seen this happen. Maybe you've lived it. You open up, you talk about what's stressing you, what's bothering you, what's eating at you, and in that moment, it feels real, honest, human. But weeks later, that same information comes back, not as support, but as leverage. A subtle comment, a joke that cuts a little too deep, a reaction that tells you they've mapped your weak points. That's when it clicks, too late. The world loves to preach emotional openness, but it never tells you the cost of exposing yourself without discernment. Because most people aren't equipped to handle your depth, they're equipped to exploit it. And once they see where you bend, they test how far you break. That's why coldness matters here. Not fake numbness, control, precision. The ability to feel everything and reveal nothing unless it serves you. Because the moment people can read your emotional state in real time, they can influence it. They know when you're hurt, when you're impressed, when you're insecure. And once they know that, they don't need to overpower you, they just need to press the right button. You become predictable, emotionally, and that's a dangerous place to be. I watched this play out in a way that stayed with me. 2 men, same pressure, same confrontation. One got triggered instantly, voice raised, body tense, explaining himself, trying to regain control through words. But the more he reacted, the more control he lost. You could see it slipping. The other one didn't react. He listened. No facial shift, no urgency, no emotional leakage, just silence. Then he said calmly, "We'll deal with it later." That was it. No escalation, no performance. And the room adjusted to him. Because emotional control does something most men underestimate. It creates uncertainty, and uncertainty creates respect. People don't know how to move around you when they can't read you. They hesitate. They think twice. They become careful, not because you're aggressive, but because you're unshakable. That's the archetype. And here's the internal conflict. You've been conditioned to believe that expressing everything makes you authentic, that showing your emotions in every moment makes you real. It doesn't. It makes you exposed. There's a difference between being emotionally aware and being emotionally available to everyone. One is power, the other is vulnerability without protection. So you start tightening control. You stop reacting instantly. Bad news, criticism, disrespect. You don't give them your raw reaction. You take it, process it privately, and respond when you decide, not when they expect. You stop oversharing your struggles. Not everyone deserves access to your internal world. Most people don't even respect it. They consume it. You stop showing stress on your face like it's a public broadcast. Even when things are heavy, your external remains steady, controlled, measured. That doesn't mean you become empty, it means you become selective. You feel deeply, but you reveal strategically. Because emotions are power, but only when they're contained. Most men walk around like open books, every thought, every reaction, every feeling visible on the surface, and open books get read once, then discarded. You need to become something else. A closed system, a vault. Not cold for the sake of it, but protected, deliberate, unreadable unless you choose otherwise, because when people can't figure out what you're feeling, they can't figure out how to move you. And when they can't move you, they start respecting you. Number 6, let silence speak. Most men are terrified of silence, not because it's empty, but because it exposes them. The moment a conversation pauses, they rush in, filling the gap with words, explanations, nervous laughter, anything to avoid that tension. And in doing that, they give everything away. Because silence isn't empty, it's pressure. And whoever controls that pressure controls the interaction. You've seen this without realizing it. Someone asks you a question that catches you off guard, and instead of holding the moment, you start talking, explaining more than necessary, adding details nobody asked for, trying to regain control through volume. But the more you speak, the more you reveal. Your uncertainty, your need to be understood, your discomfort. That's how people read you. Silence does the opposite. It blocks access. It forces the other person to sit in their own thoughts. And most people can't handle that. They start talking more, filling the space, revealing things they didn't plan to say. Not because you asked, but because your silence pulled it out of them. That's power. I remember a situation that made this clear in a brutal way. A guy tried to challenge me in front of others, subtle jab, designed to get a reaction. Everyone looked, waiting. That moment where you feel the pressure to respond, to defend, to say something clever. I didn't. I just looked at him, no expression, no reaction, no movement. 10 seconds passed, then 15. You could feel the discomfort spreading. He shifted, laughed awkwardly. "I'm just messing with you," he said. Then changed the subject. I never said a word, but the message landed harder than anything I could have said. Silence said, "You don't move me. You don't control this. You're not even worth a reaction." That's the level most men never reach, because they're addicted to responding. They think every comment deserves an answer. Every challenge needs a comeback. Every silence needs to be filled. But that's not control, that's compulsion. And compulsion is weakness. When you're comfortable with silence, everything changes. Your presence becomes heavier. People hesitate before speaking. They measure their words, not because you're aggressive, but because they don't know how you'll respond, or if you'll respond at all. And that uncertainty creates respect. Here's where it gets uncomfortable for you. Silence will feel unnatural at first. Your mind will push you to speak, to explain, to soften the moment. That's conditioning. You were trained to keep things flowing, to avoid awkwardness, to make others comfortable. But respect doesn't grow in comfort, it grows in tension. So you start using silence deliberately. When someone accuses you of something, you don't rush to defend. You let them talk. Let them overextend. Let them expose their own position. Then, if you choose to speak, you do it with precision, not emotion. When someone asks you a difficult question, you pause. You let the silence sit just long enough to shift the weight back onto them. Then you answer clean, controlled, final. When someone tries to provoke you, you don't react. You don't give them the emotional payoff they're looking for. You stay still and let them collapse under their own attempt. In arguments, you stop chasing the last word. You let them finish, and sometimes you don't reply at all. You leave, and that silence follows them longer than any insult would. In relationships, you stop over-explaining yourself. Not everything needs to be discussed. Not everything needs clarity. Sometimes silence is the boundary, because silence, used correctly, removes you from the game entirely. And the man who can step outside the game controls it. Most people can't sit in silence. They break under it. They fill it with nonsense just to escape it. But when you master it, you become something different. You decide when to speak. You decide what matters. You decide when it's over. And once people feel that, they don't just listen to your words. They start fearing your quiet. Number 7, protect your mystery. This is where the shift becomes invisible, and that's exactly why it works. Most men leak their entire life without realizing it. Every plan, every thought, every emotion, broadcasted. They sit down with someone for 10 minutes and hand over their whole story like it's nothing. Where they've been, what they're building, who they're seeing, what's not working, and in that moment, it feels like connection. But what they've really done is remove all intrigue. And once there's nothing left to discover, there's nothing left to respect. You've felt this too, just from the other side. Think about the people who stay in your mind longer than they should. The ones you can't quite read. You don't know exactly what they're doing, what they're thinking, where they stand. There's space there, and your mind fills it. That's not accidental, that's psychological pull. Humans are wired to chase what they can't fully access. Not what's given, what's withheld. And most men give everything up front, then wonder why interest fades so quickly. I knew a guy who did the opposite. You'd ask him what he was working on. He'd just say, a few things. Calm, no details. You'd ask where he was going next. We'll see. No performance, no explanation. At first, it felt vague, almost frustrating. But over time, something strange happened. People started paying more attention to him. Because there was always something missing. He wasn't hiding, he was filtering. That's the difference. Mystery isn't about being secretive for the sake of it. It's about control over what gets revealed and when. You decide what people earn access to, not out of fear, but out of awareness. Because information is leverage. The more people know about you, the more angles they have. They can predict you, judge you, even use your own words against you. But when there are gaps, they can't lock onto anything. They're left guessing, and that uncertainty keeps them engaged. You become a moving target. And that's where respect lives, not in being known, but in being partially unknown. Here's the internal conflict. You've been taught that openness builds connection, that sharing more makes you relatable, likable. And it does, temporarily. But long-term, it kills intrigue. It makes you easy to label, easy to categorize, easy to forget. You become familiar, so you start tightening access. You stop narrating your life in real time. Not every move needs to be announced. Let results speak after they exist, not before. Silence around your actions builds more weight than constant updates ever will. You stop answering every question fully. Sometimes, "I'd rather not get into that," is enough. Not defensive, just closed. And that boundary alone changes how people approach you. You stop explaining your personal life like it's public property. People don't need full access to your relationships, your plans, your struggles. Give them fragments, not the full picture. and watch what happens. Conversations change. People lean in more. They listen differently. They try to read between your words, because now there's something to figure out. And humans respect what they have to work for. Because mystery does something powerful, it protects you. People can't gossip about what they don't know. They can't weaponize information you never gave them. They can't predict a version of you they've never fully seen. You stay one step ahead, without saying a word. This isn't about isolation. It's about controlled access. You're present, but not fully available. You're open, but not exposed. You let people in, but only as far as they've earned. Because the moment someone feels like they've fully figured you out, your edge disappears. So you don't give them that satisfaction. You let them wonder, you let them guess, you let them keep trying to understand something you never fully reveal. And that's where your power stays. Let me tell you about someone I knew. We'll call him Marcus. Not because the name matters, but because you've met this man before, or worse, you've been him. Marcus was the guy everyone liked. Always smiling, always available, always saying yes. The one who shows up early, stays late, fixes problems that aren't even his. If you needed something, Marcus was already on his way before you finished asking. And in the beginning, people praised him for it. Good guy, reliable, solid. He wore those labels like armor. But slowly, the tone changed. Messages went unanswered. Plans got canceled last minute. Favors became expectations. Gratitude disappeared. People stopped asking, "Can you?" and started assuming, "You will." And Marcus felt it, that quiet shift from being appreciated to being used. The kind of feeling you can't explain without sounding bitter, so you stay quiet and keep giving. Until one night, something broke. He was sitting there, dressed, ready, waiting, and the message came in. Canceled. No apology, just an excuse. Again. And in that moment, it hit him, not emotionally, but clearly, coldly. He wasn't being disrespected by accident. He had trained people to treat him that way. That's the part most men refuse to face. So Marcus did something that looked small on the outside, but was violent on the inside. He pulled back. No speech, no announcement, no "I'm changing now" speech. He just stopped. Stopped answering immediately. Stopped saying yes automatically. Stopped explaining himself. Stopped offering warmth to people who only showed up when it benefited them. His energy shifted, quieter, sharper, distant. And people noticed. At first, confusion. "What's wrong with you?" "You've changed." Of course he had, but not in the way they meant. He didn't become someone else. He just stopped being easy. And then came the shift. The same people who ignored him started reaching out. The ones who canceled started confirming plans. The ones who took him for granted started respecting his time. Nothing about his value changed, just his availability, his reactions, his boundaries. That's all it took. I asked him once what flipped the switch. He said something simple, almost obvious. "People don't respect what they can always access, so I stopped being accessible." That line stays with you, because you know it's true. This isn't about becoming cruel, it's about becoming calculated. There's a difference. Cruel men destroy blindly, calculated men control precisely. Marcus didn't lose his character, he removed his excess. And that's what most men need to understand, through constant availability, through over-explaining, through emotional exposure, through chasing approval, through trying to be liked by people who haven't earned your presence. You don't need to become someone new, you need to stop giving yourself away. Because once you apply this, things change in ways that don't look dramatic, but feel undeniable. People hesitate before crossing you. They think twice before canceling. They measure how they speak to you, not because you demanded it, but because your behavior forced them to adjust. That's real power, unspoken, unannounced, but felt. And here's the reality most won't act on. Knowing this means nothing. You can understand every word and still go back to being the same man tomorrow. Still replying instantly, still over-explaining, still making yourself available to people who haven't earned it. That's the comfortable path, and it leads to the same outcome. Or you do something different. You become selective, controlled, unreadable when needed, present by choice, not by default. You stop reacting, stop explaining, stop performing. You let people feel your absence. You let silence do the work. You let mystery build the tension. You let your boundaries speak before you do. Because respect doesn't come from asking, it comes from becoming someone people can't afford to take lightly. And once you reach that point, everything changes. Not loudly, but permanently. If this hit you harder than you expected, it's because you recognized yourself in it, and most men won't admit that. So be honest. Which one exposed you the most? Was it being too available, speaking too much, chasing approval, or letting people read you too easily? Write it down in the comments, just the number, no explanations. I want to see who's